Hi. When browsing through social media, you might get the impression that you will need a big set of lenses in order to start photography the right way. Truth is that some of the best and most regarded photographers were using just one focal length most of the time. You probably ask yourself, what do these numbers on a lens mean? In this case, 50mm describes the focal length, which I will try to explain from an artistic point of view in this video. A shorter focal length means a more wide angle, and a longer focal length means it is a telephoto lens. The second number is a measure how much light this lens is able to capture, but in this video we will just talk about the different focal lengths and what they can be used for, and how you can benefit from using prime lenses when starting with photography. The more you know about how a focal length will affect your image in which way, the better you can decide which one is the right for you. I will leave out special lenses like tilt shift or fisheye, and I will just focus on the most common lenses, which are 28, 35, 50 and 85mm. 28mm is a really interesting focal length that I'm just starting to use right now. As you can see, the picture is quite wide and you will be able to capture bigger subjects in one frame. It's a great focal length for smaller rooms or showing larger groups of persons. The background is not as compressed as with longer focal lengths, and you won't have such a pronounced background separation from your object. You can clearly see the wide angle typical distortions. Here are some examples. .35mm is one of my favorites, because it's such a versatile lens. This is the area in which a lens is called a normal lens. Somewhere in between 35 and 50mm is the equivalent to what the human eye can see. You can comfortably shoot portraits and documentary scenes with this focal length. Object separation is a little bit better than with a 28mm lens, but I recommend getting a faster lens if you are into bokeh. .50mm is the longer end of normal lenses. I started with this focal length on my Minolta X500 without knowing a lot about focal lengths. Back in the days, I loved the bokeh that you were able to produce with a relatively fast 50mm lens. And I thought that's what makes a camera really professional. Retrospectively, this was the most boring way to use this lens, and unsurprisingly my images were boring as well. But as the viewing angle is tighter than 35mm or 28mm, it's way easier to compose an image, and I could concentrate on learning things like focusing or getting the exposure right. Now I'm using 50mm more often because I really like the neutrality you can achieve with this type of lenses. It's perfect for minimalist environmental shots and for portraits as well. .85mm is a telephoto lens. It's often used for portraits or detail shots because the background is really compressed and you can perfectly isolate your subject from the background. I personally consider this lens an addition to the other lenses I mentioned before, but if you are into portrait photography, there's no problem in starting with this lens as well. I'm really confident in saying that just one focal length is more than enough for your first steps in photography. What is true though is that changing the focal length from time to time can be really inspiring too. I really hope I was able to help with your decision. With all kind of gear there is no right and wrong, and the answer is always it depends. But I really recommend starting with a single focal length instead of a zoom lens, because you will use your camera in a much more creative way. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe.